least hiking provided some warmth, but sitting there, being buried alive in the snow and wind, it was bad. I don't know who made the call to keep pushing forward to the top, but it was the only way anyone was going to survive. There was a road on the other side of the mountain with vehicles most likely waiting for us. There was no use kicking around anymore for the Marines in the snow because things were just getting worse. Pretty much everyone had some form of frostbite. We just didn't have the right gear to protect ourselves. Finally, we get to the top, and thankfully the tents are waiting for us. The tent I'd gotten was broken, so I ended up piling in with a bunch of other guys like a bunch of sardines. What a shit show that was, setting up in the wind. They gave us maybe 20 minutes whilst they figured out what to do about the missing guys. I'm assuming they called the proper authorities before that. It was way too windy for helicopters and nearly impossible for even us to search the area. The wrong gust of wind could literally blow us down the mountain, tumbling face first. Their solution was to first use our thermal optics from the top and search for the guys. Nothing. Then we all got in a big line and held hands as we walked down the mountain. Nothing. Granted, we didn't bring our 200 pounds of crap with us, so it was a lot easier walking back up. By now, it was 4 AM and it seemed to be getting worse. They told us to go back to our tents and warm up for 20 minutes because we were literally turning into zombies. Now, this is quite possibly the weirdest part. For the next 12 hours, no one remembers what the hell happened. Everyone woke up in their tents and have zero recollection about it. It was daytime now and everywhere was covered in snow. A few of the Special Forces guys, including Kurtz, were talking to all of my higher-ups about something. I didn't find out until later that the Special Forces dude found all of our missing guys at various locations. Not 30 kilometers far, but much shorter distances, like 5 to 10 kilometers. He is bleeding too. While it's not impossible to hike in a few hours, it's kind of damn hard to get lost on a mountain where your only objective is to go up. Not to the side, or around, or down. Up, damn it. We'd radioed that in, and the base camp sent special vehicles designed for snow to get them. They kind of resembled half-tracks. The same day, they loaded us up onto these special snow trucks and told us we were going back to the barracks. When we got there, we got debriefed on how successful our mission was and some BS about accountability of guys. Blah, blah, blah. In any other situation, they would have lost their jobs if they lost Marines. Just not in Bridgeport, I guess. We packed up our bags that night and got woken up around 3 AM to get on a bus back to the desert. I was extremely relieved to be back. No one ever really talked about our time there again. The guys who disappeared always came back from the hospital saying they don't remember anything, or that they don't want to talk about it. Never go to Bridgeport, folks. What you see now is a picture of me sitting on a rock at the base of the Devil's Incline. To this day, I have no idea what the hell the distortion is. I honestly couldn't have done that if I tried. Could this be why the NCIS guy asked if I'd taken any pictures? Oh yeah, by the way, I obviously blurred my face, serial numbers and names. I'm talking about the bottom half. There are also some creepy old buildings on the... Oh, I have no idea. Never go to Bridgeport, folks. What you see now is a picture of me sitting on a rock at the base of the Devil's Incline. To this day, I have no idea what the hell the distortion is. I honestly couldn't have done that if I tried. Could this be why the NCIS guy asked if I'd taken any pictures? Oh yeah, by the way, I obviously blurred my face, serial numbers and names. I'm talking about the bottom half. There are also some creepy old buildings on the way there. I wonder why they were abandoned.
Time murder is so gloriously inappropriate.
You want me to pull my gun?
No, unless you're talking about your
Yo, Envy.
After Bridgeport, we were given a pretty decent amount of time off due to the various public and military holidays.
That's crazy, because when he did Obama's painting, yo, somebody hit me on Facebook. They was like, yo, Trap, did you paint that picture of Obama? I was like, hell no, but thank you that you even thought that I did that shit. Like, I swear, somebody was like, yo, did you paint Obama? I seen that Obama painting you did. I was like, yo, I ain't do that shit, man. Fucking Kende Whiteley did that shit, yo. That's my dude, though. Yo, Whiteley, motherfucking, my man's, oh, you can't see his tag. I got his joint over there. Fucking Tim Akamura. Yo, Tim Akamura. Goddamn Fahamu Peku. Goddamn Kadir Nelson. Oh yeah, them the motherfuckers I got down. I look up to. You know what I'm saying? Those are like, I mean, but being in the art field now, like for a few years, I met tons and tons and tons of fucking stupid, talented, crazy, dope ass fucking artists, yo. But as far as career artists go, like dudes who got their name out there and that's all they do, they make a damn good living off their art. Those are the guys like that I look towards. Motherfuckers who can sell an original painting for like 36 grand. You know what I'm saying? Most motherfuckers don't even make 36 grand in a year. You know what I'm saying? These dudes got their art everywhere. France, Germany, motherfucking Canada. I fucked up. I got paint all on my shit just now, man. Picked up a few pieces I had at a gallery. They didn't sell, but you know, I always get a lot of positive feedback, a lot of really good compliments. Oh, it ain't nothing but, you know, time and patience. You know what I'm saying? And if I don't get that's that's not gonna stop me from painting. I'm still gonna paint. Cause I like to paint.
I spent most of it sleeping and drinking, as well as indulging myself in the countless luxuries I had gone without whilst I was away in the mountains. It was nice to finally relax and recover for a bit. However, good things don't last long. Pretty soon we packed our bags, grabbed heavy things, and headed off into the desert. We went through a few short but boring field ops that you guys probably wouldn't want to hear about. But this one in particular was in December, and things had drastically changed weather-wise. It was now winter and the temperature hovered just above freezing. The wind was the worst part. You could wear 5 billion layers and somehow the wind would cut through them all and slowly drain the heat from your body. It was miserable. For the first few days, we did some live fire training exercises. The funnest part was probably when they had me blow up a piece of plywood riddled with nails labelled door to simulate a breach. Except someone cut the time fuse on the charge a little too short and it went off just as I'd gotten behind cover. The riflemen flooded in through the smoke and dust blindly and cleared the objective of those evil paper targets. It was great. Our next destination after that was a giant ghost town in the middle of the desert. Now get this.
Watercolors?
It's extremely detailed and built.
People think watercolors are easy. That's probably like some of the hardest medium, like everything else you can paint over acrylics, you can paint over oils. You can't paint over watercolor. You fuck that shit up, you gotta start over. You can't fuck up watercolors, If I can put a big ass black mark right here and I can just let that shit dry and paint right over that motherfucker. Man, if you put too dark of a mark somewhere on your watercolors, that you can't do that. You can't get it off, you good? You can have the watercolors, bro. I make too many mistakes for that shit.
We're like a real city in the Middle East. When we got there, it was pretty dark and the streetlights were on. We quickly grabbed our packs and found a vacant building to set up in. It was pretty creepy because there were paintings on the wall, furniture in every room, and there were even detailed things like old computers or treadmills, with power outlets. It was as if they quite literally copy and pasted an entire town into the desert. Hundreds upon hundreds of buildings, complexes, bazaars, churches, everything. Being out of the wind and given a few hours to sleep, I figured I could get some solid rest in before the training scenario started the next day. Nope. All throughout the night, I was awoken by a constant banging noise. I figured that the wind had picked up and there was just a loose shutter or door somewhere nearby. Great. I finally had enough and put in the farm ear protection that we had to wear when we shoot. That worked, and I slept like a log for the rest of the night. The next morning, we started the day just as the sun was coming up. It was still cold and windy, and I wasn't really excited to eat an MRE, so I just drank some water and basked in the early morning sun in a desperate attempt to keep warm. Pretty soon, our next task was explained to us. For the next few days, we would build a small base in one of the houses and send patrols out into the city to look for insurgent fighters, played by Marines. There would be civilian actors playing out roles like mayor, local religious leader, police chief, and so forth. Then we were given some annoying laser tag system for our body and our rifles. Our rifles would fire a laser every time we fired a blank round, and if we were shot by another laser, the laser tag system would start beeping loudly and repeat our status, injured or dead. It all sounded pretty cool, actually. We picked a pretty large 3-story building next to a road and began fortifying our defenses. First, we surrounded the entire perimeter with tons of barbed wire. Then, we blocked off all exits with sandbags and furniture except for one. There was only one way to get in, and it was right in front of a machine gun that we had set up on the above floor. We blocked all the windows on the 3rd floor on the stairs to get there with furniture, just in case they decided to climb in somehow. They weren't allowed to anyway. It was a well-built defense, and we were proud. No one should be able to sneak in. During the night, my squad went out to patrol and look for bad guys, while one squad slept and another squad defended our compound. All I can say is that it was super creepy and exhausting. I must have walked for around 2 hours, and maybe made it halfway through the town. When we finally got back from our uneventful patrol, we were told to sleep for a few hours. Sure enough, I started to hear that damn banging. This time it was louder. It was like a dull thud on an old iron door. Slowly and methodically, it never missed a beat. A few of us agreed that we would find out what the hell was making the noise and put an end to it on our next patrol. I put the foam earbuds back in and slept for maybe an hour or two before I was woken up by what sounded like a training grenade going off outside of the building. Great. We're being attacked. It's 2 a.m. and people are shooting at us and throwing fake grenades. A few people's laser systems are beeping loudly and they're notionally bleeding out. The rest of us are shooting out of the windows and calling out targets. The machine gun above me is raining hot brass down the stairs. It was honestly great fun. The insurgents eventually disappear into the dark, and my squad was sent to pursue them. We checked the surrounding area, but all we found were unarmed civilians. They were pretty great actors, I'll give them that. I felt extremely immersed in the situation when they told us that they would only give us information if we gave them some guns to protect themselves. Not gonna happen. On the way back to our base, I made sure we did a quick check for whatever the banging noise was. We tracked the noise to a building that wasn't very far from our little base. Maybe 2 houses over? But it was blocked from our view. Here's the weird thing. 3 of the windows and doors were covered with sheet metal and bolted shut. When we got close, the banging had stopped. But we all knew it was coming from that building specifically. Unable to do anything, we went back and posted up on various positions to pull security so that the other squad could rest. I got the short end of the stick and ended up on the window facing the direction of the building. Before I relieved the guy standing there, I asked him if he'd heard the noise from the building. He nodded and said he's heard it all night. I felt like Edgar Allan Poe listening to The Raven, slowly going mad by myself. Somewhere in my dreamy stupor, I postulated that somehow one of the surgeons had snuck their way into the building and were pulling some kind of psyops on us with banging away all night. Just as I had passed this up, the banging stopped, and I looked like an idiot. Pretty soon the sun came up. The rest of the day was pretty uneventful. We set up a few checkpoints and interacted with the locals, gave them water, asked them about the insurgents, etc. Typical roleplay fun. Once the sun set, we were again harassed by the insurgents, but this time it was a little less fun, because I'd slept maybe 3 or 4 hours in the last few days. It was over in 10 minutes and another squad went out looking for them. I sat down to try and get a quick nap. And the banging started right back up again. I was getting pretty damn irritated at this point, so I insisted to head out with a few guys to check the surrounding buildings. The building with the banging had no way of getting in, so I got creative and thought maybe there was a tunnel. We went around to each house and kicked all the rugs around like some terrible guests, and boom, we found a hatch. Now, we were told not to enter any of the tunnels because the fans they used for ventilation were no longer functional. They told us that we could suffocate.
If my art didn't have a home,
we would use
that
up all
always
the
means a
oxygen
lot.
in just a few minutes. So we made the decision to go down. We dropped down, and it was absolutely pitch black. So we turned on our flashlights and proceeded forward to the end of the tunnel. As we got closer to the ladder, we heard something similar to the sound you hear when you turn a really old television on. Kind of like a mix between that and when your ears start ringing. All of the hair on my body stood up. There was a slight tinge of fear creeping up on me, but I decided to ignore it and start climbing the ladder. I opened the hatch and immediately began clearing the pitch-black room. Nothing. I moved towards the stairs whilst the rest of the guys flowed in. At first, I thought it was something breathing hard from the exertion, but now I was sure of it. I could hear the faintest whisper of someone saying, "We're in here," coming from upstairs somewhere. We moved tactically up the stairs in pairs and began clearing out the rooms. When we got to the end of the hallway, there was something that looked like a kid's room, and I went in. Nothing. Then the batteries on my flashlight started to fade. Impossible. I just replaced them today, and they don't drain that fast. I think it was either the closet or the corner, but I heard what sounded like a little girl's laugh. More like a giggle. I ran straight the hell out of that room, and I was met with several "what the fucks." Someone nervously asked if that was me. I said no, it wasn't, and I made the executive decision that we were all getting the fuck out of there. All of us were nearly panicking at this point, but we tried to keep it together long enough to get the fuck out of that house. We started to make our way back down the stairs when we heard the laughing again. As we approached the hatch, we noticed that now, of all times, there was tons of furniture stacked on top of it. Desks, wardrobes, couches, even a microwave. Pretty soon our flashlights all faded out slowly, and we all scrambled towards the pile of shit. The rest of the flashlights died out. Everyone panicked and started blindly throwing and shoving things out of the way. The laughing grew louder and more sinister, like it was coming down the stairs. After what seemed like years, we cleared everything and opened the hatch. We jumped straight through and scrambled back to the other hatch and through the tunnel. We made it out and pretty much ran back to our little fort 25 meters away. All of us were scared to shit and nearly woke everyone up with us stumbling around and cursing. A lieutenant asked us what had happened. We told him, and he wasn't really sure whether or not to believe us. His only response was, "Yeah, I've heard some weird stuff about this town." And then he walked away. We tried to sleep for the next few hours. I went to the second floor because I figured that was the safest. I knew that I wasn't going to sleep with some creepy stuff going down next door, but it was nice to sit down and relax. Around 3 a.m., I heard what sounded like running upstairs, loudly. Now, this is impossible because we blocked off the stairs to the 3rd floor with desks and couches, so no one would be able to access it from the roof. A few guys were woken up and sent to go upstairs to clear it out. Absolutely nothing. None of the furniture had even been moved. I didn't sleep at all that night. In the morning, the townspeople began rioting outside of our compound. It was peaceful at first, but then someone with a backpack detonated an imaginary IED despite our best efforts. As soon as it went off, we took fire from pretty much everywhere, and a lot of us were killed. We were told to go to the first aid station all the way across the city to get revived. I felt like a zombie from the lack of sleep and countless patrols. Once we were revived, we were told that our mission had changed. We were no longer on the defensive, but we would be clearing out a sector of the town as part of a larger force. This would be our final event, and then we would be able to go home. We got maybe an hour of sleep before the sun went down, and the offense started. It was pretty easy at first, until we started to take contact from various buildings. We cleared most of them and didn't find anyone except for a few open hatches. We sat around and held security while they figured out what to do. Logically, the people in charge of us concluded that the insurgents must have escaped through the tunnels, even though everyone was told not to use them. Cursing under my breath, our squads broke off and I followed my fearless leaders into one of the tunnels. It was pretty simple, but much longer this time. When we had got to the very end, we climbed the ladder and tried opening the hatch, but it wouldn't budge. Awesome. We headed back the direction we came, and just as my cynical self predicted, the hatch we entered through was stuck also. A few of the stronger guys attempted to muscle it open, but it was like someone had put a huge boulder on top of it. We tried our radios, but they weren't working, so we sort of started banging on the hatch. Nothing. A few guys started panicking, but all I wanted to do was go to sleep. So I sat down and accepted my fate as I reconsidered if I made the right decisions in life. I was never claustrophobic, but I was starting to feel like I was. Guys were still banging loudly, and I started to filter them out. Maybe 5 minutes later, we heard someone banging on the hatch. We knocked back. They banged again. Someone yelled, "We're in here!" We waited a few seconds for a response, but what we got back still haunts me to this day. It was the same damn little girl laughter we heard the other night. We all froze. Whatever was on the other side started to bang again, slowly and methodically. It felt like I was in a torture cell. I tried my best to drown out the sound and think about anything else. No one dared to knock again. It must have been 2 or 3 hours, I don't remember, but it felt like an eternity before we heard footsteps from above. Everyone held their breath and listened. We heard some furniture being shifted and a few curse words that quickly gave away their identity. Other Marines. Finally. Soon the hatch was opened, and before we were all even out of the tunnel, we were getting absolutely chewed out to shreds. Multiple higher-ups yelling and cursing. The guys in charge of us were threatened with some punishments, but I personally was relieved to be yelled at. It beat being stuck in there. From what I heard, they noticed that we weren't part of the assault and assumed we were put out of game. They didn't realize until after they had regrouped that we were still missing. They got our last known location from one of the other squads who had entered the other tunnels near us and backtracked their way to us. I'm glad that someone remembered we were here because a lot of the buildings had the same damn paint job. Following that incident, it was nearly morning time and we hung out until trucks came to pick us up and took us back to our base. That was easily one of the more terrifying experiences because being buried alive scares the hell out of me to this day. Unfortunately, I myself only managed to take one picture. There's an album of pictures from a certain article if you're interested. There's also a lot of information about the range itself, 1,500 plus buildings, 1,866 feet of tunnels, and $170 million spent, etc. I'm sorry for the time between updates. I've been exhausted by the time I get off work. Hopefully I'll do part 4 by this weekend. Also, for the explosive, time fuse can be kind of tricky to work with. We do a test burn to get an accurate burn rate, but sometimes it doesn't always match. I've gotten a lot of non-creepy related questions about military stuff and life in general. I'm still considering whether I should start some kind of blog about all my experiences, creepy or not. Feel free to PM me if you're interested. Thanks again for all the positive support. I'll see you guys next time.
It's time to experience the new Buick. GM employed program participants with...
Things seem to have calmed down in the desert for a few months. We'll skip over the few uneventful field ups and go forward to March. It was still miserably cold and the wind still chilled us to the bone, but the sun stayed in the sky just a bit longer with each passing day. I'd just spent the rest of my Sunday packing and getting ready for an excruciating week-long field op. I'd become quite knowledgeable of all the ranges by now, each of them having their own story. Usually they brief us on what we'll be doing, but this field op was extremely tactical and our objectives on many different things, so I didn't really have a clue on what we were doing. The first day we drove out to some random compound with 4 walls. We dropped our packs and we waited there to get picked up by track vehicles, AAVs, all day and mostly slept. When the night hit, a terrible sandstorm engulfed us. You couldn't open your eyes for more than a few seconds. If you did, you could only see for a few feet in front of you. It was equally amazing as it was terrifying. Around midnight, the track vehicles showed up and we piled inside gratefully. What you're seeing now is a picture of them. We expected that we would go somewhere, but we ended up just sitting there for a few hours before abruptly starting driving in an unknown direction for about 2 hours. Then we stopped. We waited for what felt like an eternity. We weren't allowed out. The justification was that we could notionally be shot and put out of their little war game. Awesome. Finally, after about 10 minutes, we were allowed out to relieve ourselves and grab food out of our packs. We had only got a few minutes and it was dark outside, so that means I've just spent an entire day inside a vehicle. But at least the sandstorm had died down. A few hours pass by. I can't sleep sitting down on a tiny bench with 16 Marines crammed into a vehicle meant for 12. Everyone else is asleep except for one of the crewmen on radio watch. Suddenly, I hear a knock on the back hatch. It was clear as day. I nudge a few of the guys close by to get them to open the hatch, and most of them tell me to fuck off and go back to sleep. I play the clueless card and put my head down, hoping that whoever knocked would go away. The knocking continues for about 30 more seconds and then stops. Who the hell would be knocking anyway? We have radios for a reason. I spend the next few hours falling in and out of sleep before someone wakes us up and tells us that we have 5 minutes to stretch and piss. I have no idea what time it is or where I am. We all pour out of our tin can prison and spread out. There are other vehicles around us, but none of the other Marines around. We head over a dune to take a leak and take a few seconds to admire the stars. A sight for sore eyes. Somewhere in front of me, I see a dark figure off in the distance. There were no AAVs over there, and we were arguably in the middle of nowhere. As they get closer, I can see it's a Marine, but I can't make out who exactly it is. They aren't wearing a flak jacket or Kevlar, just some ragged desert camis and a boonie. There's no lounger in this field up. He gets closer, and I recognize a familiar dead gaze that doesn't reflect any light. It looks very different this time. A different body, I guess. Don't talk to him. Don't even look at him. I already broke one of those rules, so I started sprinting for the AAV. I tell everyone to get the fuck inside with enough fear in my voice to get them to go. I grab my radio and get in contact with the same lieutenant. Surely he would understand. He was the commander for the platoon I was attached to, so I called him up on the radio. PBR Street Gang, this is Vehicle 6. There's a Sergeant Wright in our perimeter. Roger. Solid copy, Vehicle 6. PBR Street Gang out. I overhear a bunch of radio chatter coming from the crew compartment. 20 seconds later, the vehicles start up and we're driving away into the desert for safer lands. Suddenly we come to a grinding halt. People in gear go flying about. I can feel the vehicle turn around and go back the way we came. What the fuck? One of the crewmen ducks down from his turret and informs us that one of the vehicles flipped the way we just were, and it was on fire. We were going back to help. Luckily, the Marines had gotten out just in time as it flipped. We were already packed to the brim, but we managed to make room for 4 more Marines. All of them were pretty banged up. We drove off, and I'm assuming someone was called to deal with the burning AAV. There wasn't much we could do with the single fire extinguisher we had in the passenger compartment. Someone asked one of the guys what had happened to the AAV, and his response was that they heard knocking on the hatch. They were told not to open it, and a few seconds later, the engine turned on and the whole thing flipped without even moving. Suddenly a fire broke out, and they all managed to scramble out before things got even worse. This was not the first time it happened. If you Google 29 Palms AAV accident, you'll see a ton of articles. It's an extremely common thing, and most of them don't make the news unless someone gets hurt. We spent the next few hours driving somewhere unknown. I had no clue where we were, but I could tell the train had a lot more hills and ditches by the number of times we banged my head. We'd gotten word that we're preparing for some big attack on a small town, so we spent the next 18 hours locked up in the tin can, occasionally moving short distances. The bad thing was that there was a fuel leak somewhere inside. All I could smell and taste were fuel. It was pretty terrible. We slept a lot, which made sense because we were being poisoned. Eventually, we'd stopped just outside of the town we were tasked with clearing. The ramp dropped and we stumbled out. The sun was bright and I felt blind. A few guys tripped because they were so lightheaded from the fumes, but I managed to keep my balance and started to run for cover behind the tank. A few other assault men followed me, and it was a terrible decision. Standing behind a tank is like standing behind a jet engine because of the heat coming from the exhaust. They quite literally burn jet fuel, JP8. I was only in the huge cone of heat for maybe a second before I ran around the tank and sprinted towards the town. Tripping over rocks and coughing up fuel from my lungs, we made it to the town. Pretty soon we discovered it was completely empty. It turns out that our enemy had been completely taken out by artillery and aerial assets. Mostly, of course. We spent most of the day airing out our lungs and appreciating the sunlight before we got back into the Amtrak and drove to a seemingly empty spot in the desert. As soon as we stepped out, we noticed that things started to randomly catch on fire. No, this wasn't hell or anything crazy. We stumbled upon an area where white phosphorus shells had been dropped. Being Marines, we were amused by the glorious fireworks and began to kick them at people. We were told the trucks would come before the sun went down, but we didn't make it back to the base until around midnight. Here's a cool picture of the rocks in action. We spent all of Friday cleaning our weapons, and we didn't get off until 6 p.m. A friend and I decided that we were going to visit Las Vegas and celebrate modern civilization. To get there, we took the notorious
Her face
Amber
is
Road.
almost done.
I've driven it many times.
With the third layer paint, so you can see here the cutoff point. So I just have to come around this side of her jawline and do her ear and her neck and her lips. So I think I'll get art in the dark. Damn, that's crazy. Not on Beyonce's blow darts. Damn, bro, I was just about to get out of here too, man. I'm trying to do more evening streams. I haven't been doing evening streams in a while, but I want to start streaming at least an hour or two in the evening, just because people have different hours and shit, yo. For the last longest, I've just been streaming earlier in the day, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. But this piece right here is coming along nice. And I'll definitely be back in here in the morning to work on it some more. Got a couple of other projects I want to get on Canvas. I might start doing that in the next few days too. I feel sleepy as shit right now. Chilling, Richard. Alright, what I've been doing, shit. Chilling. The same old shit. Same old shit. It's hot as fuck in the studio right now, yo. I'm about to go downstairs. Phew. Fucking sweating my balls off of here. Like I said, guys, I'll be back in here in the morning, yo. Yo, peace.